Synchronicities are often dismissed in modern discourse as mere coincidences, random events that happen to line up without any deeper meaning. However, when examined more closely, these moments can carry a much more profound significance. The term synchronicity was coined by the psychologist Carl Jung, who defined it as the meaningful connection of two or more events that are not causally related, yet seem to be meaningfully connected. In simpler terms, synchronicity occurs when something in the external world aligns with our internal state, thoughts, or intentions in a way that feels too precise or uncanny to be random. To understand synchronicities as meaningful messages, we have to expand our perception of reality. Most people are conditioned to view the world as a mechanical system of causes and effects, where everything can be explained by logic, statistics, and observable chains of events. This worldview leaves little room for mystery, intuition, or spiritual insight. In contrast, synchronicity invites us to explore a more interconnected perspective, one in which our inner consciousness and the outer world are not separate but constantly interacting. For example, think of a time when you were thinking about a long-lost friend and they suddenly called or texted you out of the blue. Or perhaps you were grappling with an important decision and a random conversation with a stranger gave you exactly the insight you needed. From the standpoint of ordinary logic, these incidents may seem like chance, but if you take a step back and consider the emotional or intuitive weight behind such moments, it becomes difficult to label them as meaningless. They often arrive with a feeling of resonance, a deep inner knowing that what just occurred was significant. These experiences are often highly personal and cannot be explained by statistics or science alone. Yet they occur far too often and with too much emotional impact to be brushed off as coincidence. They seem to bypass the logical mind and speak directly to the soul, offering a sense of clarity, affirmation, or direction. In this way, synchronicities act as a bridge between the seen and the unseen, the conscious and the unconscious, the internal and the external. They challenge the mechanistic view of reality and hint at a universe that is far more intelligent and responsive than we usually assume. Another layer of meaning in synchronicities is their ability to validate our intuition. Many times, people report synchronicities happening at moments when they were unsure but had a gut feeling about something. The synchronistic event then acts as a confirmation of that intuitive hunch, reinforcing trust in one's inner guidance system. This deepens self-awareness and cultivates a more holistic way of navigating life, not just based on logic and planning, but also on sensitivity to the subtle signs reality is constantly offering. When seen as meaningful messages, synchronicities also play a role in expanding our consciousness. They can jolt us out of our routines and force us to reconsider our assumptions about how the world works. A single synchronistic event can open the door to deeper questions. Are we being guided? Is there a larger intelligence operating through the fabric of life? Why do these patterns appear more often during emotionally charged or spiritually significant periods? Asking such questions leads us to a richer, more connected way of living. Synchronicities are also invitations. They beckon us to pay attention, to stay present, and to engage more deeply with our experiences. Life stops being a string of random occurrences and starts revealing itself as a web of meaning and intelligence. In this sense, synchronicities are not just passive observations, but active prompts from the universe, encouraging us to align more closely with our purpose and path. They reflect a creative relationship between ourselves and the world around us, one that is based not on control, but on awareness and responsiveness. One of the most common and accessible forms of synchronicity comes in the shape of recurring numbers and seemingly random, but meaningful encounters. These are not just random events, but deeply symbolic communications that seem to bypass the rational mind and strike at something deeper. Our intuitive sense that life is more interconnected than it appears. Recurring numbers like 11-22 or 333 are frequently reported by individuals going through significant periods of transformation or spiritual awakening. These numbers often appear on clocks, license plates, receipts, or in unexpected places, and the timing of their appearance tends to align with thoughts, decisions, or emotional states that are meaningful to the individual. While skeptics might argue that this is merely a case of selective attention or confirmation bias, the lived experience of such synchronicities suggests something more mysterious at play. The recurrence of specific numbers is often interpreted as symbolic guidance. For example, 1111 is commonly associated with awakening intuition and alignment with one's higher purpose. When someone repeatedly sees this number during a period of introspection or change, It can feel like a subtle affirmation from the universe or a higher intelligence that they are on the right path. Similarly, 444 might be seen as a sign of protection, grounding, or stability. The key here is not just the number itself, but the context in which it appears and the personal meaning it carries. People often report feeling a sense of calm, reassurance, or heightened awareness when they notice these patterns, indicating that the experience goes beyond mere chance and into the realm of meaningful communication. Meaningful encounters are another powerful manifestation of synchronicity. These might involve meeting someone at exactly the right moment, a person who offers advice, help, or a perspective that profoundly shifts your thinking or life direction. These encounters often seem orchestrated by something beyond our conscious control. For instance, you might be dealing with a personal struggle and run into an old friend who went through the exact same issue and shares how they overcame it. Or you might strike up a conversation with a stranger while waiting in line, only to discover they have a connection to an opportunity you've been seeking. These meetings can feel fated or destined, as though the universe is arranging the pieces behind the scenes to guide you toward growth or resolution. In many cases, these encounters carry an emotional charge that distinguishes them from ordinary, forgettable interactions. There's often a sense of timing that feels too precise to be accidental. The other person may say exactly what you needed to hear, even without knowing your situation. Or they may introduce a concept book or opportunity that opens up new possibilities. These kinds of synchronistic meetings have a way of breaking through the noise of everyday life and delivering moments of clarity, insight, or emotional healing. They remind us that we are not isolated beings but participants in a much larger web of interconnection. Recurring numbers and meaningful encounters can also act as catalysts. They often appear at pivotal moments, during a career change after a loss, while making a major decision, or when embarking on a spiritual journey. These signs don't necessarily predict the future, but they can provide a kind of energetic nudge, pointing our attention in a certain direction. They suggest that we are not alone in our journey, and that reality itself may be responsive to our thoughts, emotions, and intentions. When multiple forms of synchronicity begin to converge, such as seeing the same number repeatedly, and then meeting someone who discusses that very number or symbol, it becomes increasingly difficult to chalk it all up to random chance. The beauty of these examples lies in their subtlety. Synchronicities are not usually loud or dramatic. They often whisper rather than shout. But those who are attuned to them find that they show up with uncanny precision, delivering insights or support just when it's needed most. Recurring numbers and meaningful encounters thus become symbols through which the universe speaks. A silent language that can only be understood by those willing to pay attention and trust the process of unfolding meaning. The divide between how ancient civilizations and modern society perceive synchronicities is both striking and revealing. For thousands of years, cultures across the globe have regarded signs, omens, patterns, and meaningful coincidences as messages from the divine, nature, or the unseen realms. Ancient peoples did not separate the material world from the spiritual one. Instead, they viewed reality as a living, breathing system of interconnected forces. In such a worldview, synchronicities were not anomalies. They were expected and respected as part of the natural order. They were seen as communication from the gods, ancestors, or the cosmic intelligence that governed existence. This perspective fostered a deep reverence for the hidden messages woven into the fabric of daily life. For example, in ancient Egypt, symbols and dreams were taken very seriously and interpreted through systems that connected celestial movements, numerology, and divine archetypes. The Egyptians believed that the gods communicated through signs, whether in nature, animals, numbers, or dreams. Every unusual event could potentially hold sacred meaning. Similarly, indigenous tribes across the Americas understood the language of synchronicity intuitively. They saw connections between the flight pattern of birds, the sudden appearance of animals, weather changes, and personal or communal circumstances. These signs were not superstition, they were guidance. Shamanic traditions, both ancient and still practiced today, rely heavily on the interpretation of such synchronicities to diagnose, heal, and understand the energetic state of individuals and communities. In Eastern philosophies like Taoism and Buddhism, synchronicities are not only acknowledged, but embedded into the core understanding of reality. The Tao, for instance, represents the underlying flow of the universe, a kind of intelligence or rhythm that one can attune to. When you are in harmony with the Tao, life seems to arrange itself with minimal effort, and synchronicities appeared more frequently. This is not considered magical thinking. It is viewed as evidence of alignment. Similarly, in the Vedic tradition of India, reality is composed of layers, with visible material forms being just one level of existence. On subtler levels, intention, karma, and energy patterns shape events and experiences, making the occurrence of synchronicity a natural expression of these deeper forces at work. Contrast this with the modern, scientific, materialist view that has dominated Western thought since the Enlightenment. In this paradigm, only what can be measured, replicated, and explained through physical laws is considered real or valid. This worldview leaves little room for the subjective, intuitive, or metaphysical. Coincidences are seen as the inevitable result of probability and statistics, nothing more than the mind seeking patterns where none exist. Dreams, intuition, and personal insight are often dismissed as irrational or untrustworthy. The modern lens prizes logic, data, and objectivity, but in doing so, it can neglect the rich tapestry of human experience that doesn't neatly fit into empirical boxes. This skepticism is not without merit. It has given rise to profound technological and scientific advances. However, it has also created a culture that is often disconnected from meaning. People feel isolated, their lives fragmented, and their experiences compartmentalized. In such an environment, the language of synchronicity is often muted or ridiculed. Yet, paradoxically, the more rational society becomes, the more people seem to seek experiences that transcend logic, experiences that reconnect them with a deeper sense of purpose and interconnection. It's no surprise that practices like meditation, astrology, tarot, and dream interpretation have seen a resurgence, especially among those who feel disillusioned by a purely mechanistic understanding of life. What ancient wisdom offers is a rich enchantment of the world, a way of seeing life not as a series of disconnected events, but as a living dialogue between the inner self and the outer universe. Synchronicities, in this context, are not anomalies to be dismissed but invitations to participate in a deeper, more meaningful reality. They encourage us to remember that we are not merely observers of the world, but co-creators within it. Modern skepticism, while valuable for critical thinking, often misses this experiential truth. The contrast between these two paradigms reflects a broader tension between heart and mind, soul and intellect, intuition and analysis. Presence and detachment in the fast-paced modern world, many people live much of their lives on autopilot. Daily routines, responsibilities, social pressures, and the constant stream of digital information often lead to a kind of unconscious existence. We go through motions, waking up, working, eating, sleeping, without truly being present in the moment. Thoughts loop endlessly, attention is fragmented, and life feels more like a series of obligations than a meaningful journey. This state of being disconnected, both from ourselves and the world around us, is one of the core challenges of modern life. Synchronicities, when acknowledged and understood, can serve as powerful interruptions to this unconscious pattern, offering an opportunity to shift from autopilot to a state of heightened awareness. When a synchronicity occurs, whether it's a meaningful coincidence, a recurring number, or an encounter that seems too timely to be random, it jolts us awake, if only for a moment. Something about the event feels off the script, outside of the expected, and that very strangeness causes us to pause. We begin to wonder if there is a deeper meaning behind what just happened. This moment of reflection is, in itself, a disruption of the automatic mode of living. Instead of simply reacting to life's events, we are invited to observe, interpret, and connect. This shift in perception opens the door to living more consciously, more deliberately, and with a greater sense of presence. The recognition of synchronicity naturally leads us into the present moment. To notice patterns, symbols, and timely events requires attention. We cannot detect synchronicities while mindlessly scrolling through our phones or moving robotically through our tasks. They reveal themselves in moments of stillness, openness, or emotional sensitivity. This is one reason why people often experience synchronicities during times of grief, transition, or deep questioning. In those moments, the usual distractions fall away and awareness sharpens. We become more tuned in, and reality responds accordingly. Life begins to reflect our inner world back to us in strange but meaningful ways, guiding us toward insight or change. Living on autopilot tends to reinforce the illusion of separation. We feel isolated within our own minds, cut off from others, and disconnected from any larger sense of meaning. But synchronicities reveal a different possibility. They hint at a world that is not only alive but responsive. They suggest that our thoughts, emotions, and intentions are not isolated phenomena, but are intricately linked with the events and patterns around us. This realization can be deeply transformative. Instead of feeling like passive victims of circumstance, we start to recognize ourselves as participants in a co-creative process. Our choices, perceptions, and even our attention play a role in shaping the reality we experience. One of the most empowering aspects of synchronicity is that it encourages self-inquiry. When a meaningful coincidence occurs, we naturally ask questions. Why did this happen now? What is it trying to tell me? Is there something I'm supposed to see or understand? These questions open a path toward deeper self-awareness. They push us to examine our beliefs, desires, and patterns of thought. This process can lead to insights that would never emerge in the haze of habitual living. In this way, synchronicities act as mirrors, reflecting aspects of ourselves that are ready to be seen, acknowledged, or integrated. Awareness, once awakened, tends to expand. The more we notice synchronicities, the more they seem to occur. This isn't necessarily because reality has changed, but because our perception has. We've tuned into a different layer of experience, one that was always there but previously overlooked. This expanded awareness brings with it a sense of wonder, connection, and even playfulness. Life no longer feels like a random series of events, but a meaningful tapestry where even small moments hold potential significance. In contrast to the mechanical predictability of autopilot living, this awakened state is dynamic, creative, and alive. Shifting from autopilot to awareness through synchronicity doesn't require grand revelations or mystical experiences. It begins with attention, curiosity, and a willingness to see beyond the surface of things. It asks us to slow down, to notice, and to listen, not just with our ears but with our intuition and inner knowing. This shift is subtle but profound. It reorients how we move through the world, how we interpret our experiences, and how we relate to the mystery of life unfolding around us. Awareness becomes not just a practice, but a way of being, a continuous engagement with the present moment and the messages it carries. Understanding synchronicities not only changes how we interpret reality, it also empowers us to grow, evolve, and transform in meaningful ways. These seemingly small but impactful moments carry the potential to act as catalysts for profound personal development. While many may initially view synchronicities as curious coincidences, those who take the time to observe and reflect on them often discover that they are part of a much deeper, intentional process of awakening and transformation. By learning how to recognize and respond to these symbolic events, individuals gain access to an inner compass, one that can guide them through uncertainty, decision-making, healing, and self-realization. Synchronicities often arise during periods of inner conflict, change, or spiritual questioning. These are the times when a person is most receptive to transformation. The familiar structures of their life may be dissolving, or a deep longing for something more meaningful may be surfacing. In these vulnerable and transitional phases, synchronicities begin to appear with greater frequency and clarity. They may come in the form of repetitive dreams, chance meetings, intuitive hunches, or symbolic numbers and signs. These messages serve not just as random oddities, but as gentle nudges from the subconscious, the universe, or what some might call the higher self. Each one holds a piece of insight, a direction to explore, or a layer of truth waiting to be uncovered. The act of interpreting synchronicities itself is transformative. It draws a person out of passive reactivity and into active engagement with their inner world. To understand a synchronistic event, one must reflect on their current emotional state, their thoughts at the moment of the experience, and the larger themes present in their life. This introspective process fosters self-awareness and emotional intelligence. Instead of simply reacting to events, the individual begins to ask deeper questions. What am I learning? What patterns am I repeating? What is life trying to teach me through this experience? These questions lead to insights that would otherwise remain hidden beneath the surface of conscious awareness. Furthermore, synchronicities help individuals realign with their authentic path. In a world filled with noise, external expectations, and distractions, it's easy to drift away from one's true purpose or calling. Synchronicities act as breadcrumbs that guide us back to alignment. For example, someone contemplating a career change may begin encountering symbols, people, or conversations that repeatedly point to a specific field or passion. Over time, the repetition of these signs becomes too striking to ignore, offering reassurance and direction. This alignment brings with it a sense of clarity and empowerment, as though life itself is affirming one's choices and gently pushing them toward greater fulfillment. In addition, synchronicities often have a healing component. They can reveal unresolved emotional wounds, offer comfort during times of grief, or help make sense of painful experiences. A synchronistic encounter might mirror back a hidden part of oneself, offering an opportunity for integration and acceptance. This can be particularly powerful when the message comes through another person, someone who unknowingly speaks the very words one needed to hear, or whose presence evokes a realization that leads to inner release. These moments are not orchestrated consciously, yet they have the power to dissolve long-held patterns of suffering and open new pathways of emotional freedom. Engaging with synchronicities also strengthens intuition, which is a vital tool for personal transformation. As people become more attuned to these meaningful patterns, they begin to trust their inner guidance more deeply. They notice the subtle signals, the gut feelings, the quiet whispers of the soul. This heightened sensitivity doesn't make life easier in the conventional sense, but it does make it more meaningful, more aligned, and more authentic. Intuition and synchronicity work hand in hand, forming a feedback loop that reinforces a conscious, purposeful way of living. Ultimately, synchronicities function as invitations, each one an opportunity to become more conscious, more integrated, and more aligned with the truth of who we are. They shift the narrative from being a passive recipient of life's events to an active co-creator, engaging in a dynamic conversation with the universe. This shift in perspective is not just philosophical, it has practical consequences. It changes how decisions are made, how relationships are approached, and how challenges are interpreted. It transforms life into a journey of ongoing discovery, where every experience, no matter how small, holds the potential for awakening and growth. Synchronicities are far more than mere coincidences. They are subtle, intelligent signals embedded within the flow of life, inviting us to wake up and engage with reality in a deeper, more conscious way. From recurring numbers to timely encounters, these moments carry meaning tailored to our personal journeys, challenging the notion that life is random and urging us to recognize the interconnectedness of all things. Throughout history, ancient civilizations embraced these signs as sacred messages, understanding that reality speaks in symbols, patterns, and rhythms. In contrast, modern society, rooted in rationalism and materialism, often dismisses synchronicity as chance or superstition. Yet despite this, people continue to experience them, especially during moments of transition, introspection, or emotional intensity. These events remind us that there's more to existence than what logic alone can explain. By shifting from autopilot living to mindful awareness, synchronicities become guideposts that help us see the world and ourselves with new eyes. They awaken a sense of presence, spark curiosity, and encourage us to trust our intuition. More importantly, they serve as tools for transformation, mirroring our inner state, guiding us toward alignment, and empowering us to live with intention and authenticity. To fully engage with synchronicity is to step into a dialogue with life itself, a dialogue that invites meaning, direction, and growth. It is a call to co-create our experience, to trust the unseen, and to live not just by sight but by insight. When we begin to honor these messages and follow their thread, we discover that life is not random at all, but an intricately woven masterpiece in which we are both the thread and the weaver.